I have been simultaneously dreaming and dreading creating this What Makes This Hike a Great video. On one hand, it is my absolute favorite hiking route in the area, so much so that each summer I truly look forward to introducing it to those who've never been. On the other hand, I worry my words and images will just not do it justice. After all, I'm just a greenhorn photo taker. On one hand, my most popular vlog ever was a day of photo taking on this very trail. On the other hand, I look back and cringe at the audio and video quality of that submission. I don't want to look back in 2 years on this video and feel the same way. I like this route so much that on Sunday, I hiked it with some family and friends, and then came back on Wednesday to record the same route for hyperlapse. If not for the call of a Catskills fire tower on Friday, I would have come back again for a full day of photography. This is simply to say, I will never tire of Minnewaska State Park and the Gertrude's Nose route. You may have noticed a wardrobe change. This is my third time trying to record this video. The first time, I was stiff, I was awkward, I hated every word I said. The second time, I went as far as to try a teleprompter, and still, I was stiff, I was awkward, I hated every word I said. A not insignificant part of the fun is the exploration of these areas, and it just doesn't get old. So, you will have to bear with me. I love this hike so much, I really want to do the entire video justice. So let's just have a conversation, and I'll shoot from the hip, so to say. And if I ramble at times, please forgive me. It's only because I love this hike so much and don't want to miss a thing. So Minnewaska State Park, it is in southern Ulster County, New York. It's about 22,000 acres, and it's only 90 minutes out of New York City, so it can be crowded at times, but it's with good reason. There are 3 wonderful glacial, created lakes. There are 50 miles of trails. People come here to snowshoe and cross-country ski in the winter, swim and hike and picnic in the summer. There are, I don't know how many miles of carriage roads for awesome, well, you can walk there, but a lot of people use it for biking because they go on for, tens of miles. So to explore the carriage roads, having a bike just makes a lot of sense. This was actually part of the Mohonk Mountain House, or just the Mohonk House property. But back in 1987, it was sold to the state, and they created the state park out of it. And I think a few years later they purchased the Sam's Point area from someone as well too. So Sam's Point is part of Minnewaska State Park, also an awesome and lovely place that you have to check out. Interestingly enough, the park sits on top of the Shawangunk Ridge. Most people just call it the Gunks. And if you look at a map though, it's really part of the Appalachian Mountains. And if you look even closer, it's really part of the same ridgeline that we explore on this channel so much. So that same ridgeline, Blue Mountains in Pennsylvania, Kittatinny Ridge in New Jersey, and it becomes the Shawangunks mountain range in southern New York. So it's really incredible, at least for me, to think about, where would this channel be without this ridgeline, where the vast majority of our hikes and photography and exploration takes place. There's even, which I've not done it, there's even a Shawangunks trail. I don't know where it starts, but it definitely goes from Minnewaska State Park down to High Point State Park. Not that I'd ever do that trail. Yeah, I think there's a lot of road crossings there, or a lot of road traveling there too. But it's an amazing place. The rugged goodness makes me happy and keeps this channel going for sure. So let's talk about the route itself. Like I mentioned, there are 50 miles of trail or so in Minnewaska State Park, and I'm really only talking about the 7.5 mile loop called Gertrude's Nose. And in fact, 2.5 miles or so of the loop are really on carriage roads. So it's really only a 5 mile walking trail type of hike, plus 2 to 2.5 miles on carriage roads. I wouldn't quite characterize it as easy, but it is definitely not difficult. There's about 1,500 feet of elevation gain, and a lot of that comes from, I'll call it 3 hills, but only one of those hills is really terribly challenging. It just happens to be towards the end as well, which can be a little bit of a painful point. As you're done slogging around trying to get back to the lake itself, you got to climb up this hill. You could do the hike in reverse and save the cliff edges for last, but I like to get to that right away. But yes, you can certainly do this hike in any counter or clockwise. The trail is single track through the woods, but really wonderful to walk on as you get to the cliffs. It's certainly marked, but you can explore those cliff areas to your heart's content, and there's really almost unlimited ways to traverse them, just to add to your enjoyment. And it makes a difference when you're hiking it for the second time, because there's always places you can explore that you haven't been to. Let's talk about parking for a minute. It can be crowded there. Luckily, recently they created a brand new visitor center, and with that came additional parking. It's a really nice complex and a great parking lot, but get there early. I like to get there at 9 o'clock in the morning when the park opens. You can't get there earlier. There is a $10 fee. It is well worth it. But you know, in the summer, especially on weekends, the visitor center area is extremely crowded. I don't know about you, but when I pull into a lot with a lot of cars, it kind of takes my, I don't know, feeling of hiking away from me a bit. So do yourself a favor, even if you're traveling from far away, leave as early as you can and get to the visitor center as early as you can. There's bathrooms there too. It's really nice. It's worth a stop in. Maybe not each time you visit, but it's definitely worth a stop in once or twice. Okay, what exactly makes this hike great? Why do I love it so much? All right, we're gonna take this in order as far as I can remember. So the hike starts out on these nice carriage roads. These are just okay in the summer and the spring, but if you happen to hit them on fall season, it is mesmerizing. Maybe not mesmerizing isn't the right word. It is wonderful to walk across a road and not worry about tripping while you have insane fall foliage to your left and right and multiple vantage points of great overlooks on the way to the single track trail itself. So don't look at the carriage roads as a negative. Look at them as a way to build up to this wonderful hike. There's a place called Patterson's Pellet, where it's a glacial erratic on top of a cliff edge that overlooks a valley. And especially in the fog or on a great fall day, this really looks wonderful. And it's so easy to get to, maybe about a mile, and I could put the actual mileage up on the screen. Very easy to get to and along the way. And it kind of just sets the tone for the hike itself. As that carriage road continues, you'll see pitched pine, you'll see blueberry bushes that turn red in the fall, which is wonderful, and a couple of other overlooks as well. Not quite as good as the Patterson Pellet one, but still lovely and just enjoyable to go through. At about the 2.5 mile mark, you'll get to the trail itself. And you know, the first step on this trail, you can tell it's something special. It winds its way through these various blueberry bushes, and soon you come to the area which is probably, I'm going to guess, 1.5 miles. Again, I'll put the right mileage on the screen, of these wonderful cliff edges. So as this 1.5 mile trail, maybe even longer, meanders, it'll go from wonderful, you know, woodland trail to ledges, back to the woodland trail, back to the ledges, this whole time. And each ledge is so unique, right? You'll have areas where you're peeking through pitch pines out into the great view. You'll have areas where you are meandering through these wonderful glacial erratics. You know, there's one section where I bet you there's, I'll say 8 glacial erratics just planted on top of these exposed bedrock areas. There's a section where, well, there's multiple sections that you have to cross over crevices. These crevices can be, I'm guessing, 80 feet deep. And there's one in particular that gives you a little bit of nausea, let's say, as you step over it. I mean, you can't, I guess you could fall in. But if you could take a normal step, you can cross this crevice, so it's not nothing nothing intense. But as you look down, you know it's 80 feet deep, and if you make a mistake and fall, I could see a rescue being very difficult. But I guess it's not like 127 hours. The area is very populated, so someone would see you. And actually, that's not part of the trail, so you don't have to do that section if you don't want to. But that's part of the enjoyment. As you meander through these cliff areas, you can explore on your own and wander right to the very edge if you so desire. As you get towards Gertrude's nose itself, well, let me back up. There is one section, as you cross that crevice, there's a very famous outcropping where you can stand on top of this. So here's a cliff edge, right? And then there's a piece of rock jutting out in front of it. And you can stand on this piece of rock if you'd like. I don't know, it might be too much for me. I won't dangle my legs, but I'll go to the edge itself. Okay, so you continue in and out along these cliff edges. There's this one, easy, I don't want to even call it a scramble, but the rock is like on a diagonal, and you have to walk down the diagonal. That's wonderful. And then you get to the nose itself, and all of a sudden, the expansive view is probably, 180 degrees? And you can see as far as the eye can see. You can see down to High Point and see the monument on a clear day. And that's a great place to take a stop. Along this area too, you'll see, because it's so open, you'll see some of the pine trees. They are wind blown, with only the branches blowing with the wind, or growing with the wind. Nothing's jutting out towards the cliff edges themselves. All the wind is blowing the pines back. You'll see a picture, I'll put it on the screen. I can't do that one justice. Yeah, but this area is just the star of the show. The cliffs and the gunks are wonderful. I told the story in the last video, but I'll tell it again here. There's even a time when my sister and I were hiking, and we were walking up the ledge area, and we heard voices. We couldn't figure out where the voices were coming from, and suddenly a family of 3 pops up from the cracks in the ledges themselves. So apparently there's according to them, not so difficult route where you can park in the valley, hike your way up, and then climb up the ledges somehow. The area itself is very famous in the Northeast for rock climbing. That's not for me, and I don't think I would do this cliff climb either, even though it's supposedly not technical. So I touched on it a little bit, but the second part of what makes this great is the trail itself. So once you're done with the cliffs, there is another mile, maybe 2 miles or so, where most of the trail is back away from the edge. There are certainly sections, countless sections, where you can walk out. This is one of the problems I had yesterday. Can you hear my dog walking? That sound kills me. It's nails on the hardwood floors. Could you please sit down, buddy? No, sit. Where was I? Right, the trail itself is set back from the edge once you get past Gertrude's nose. But you can still, there are multiple points where you can head out to a ledge edge, and look for additional views. But this section of trail is really one of my favorites in the area. You know that smell when you're walking on, thick, lush, I shouldn't say lush, thick pine needles that fallen from the tree in the fall? It gets me every time in this section. It just smells so wonderful, and it's so peaceful. So that section of the trail is wonderful. And then you'll come to this, after a little bit of a climb, in one area where maybe using your hand to pull yourself up would help. It's not that bad. But at the top of that is this area of exposed, I'll call it bedrock, with these 300-year-old, not all of them, 300-year-old pitch pines. And they're like peppered into various locations that almost look like someone put them there on purpose. I'm not saying Mother Nature did this. I'm just saying this spot is just wonderful. And if you take your time to walk through here, you can even explore a bit. I don't know, there's something, I think most people just blitz through it trying to get to the next vantage point, but I love to pause and really look around here, because the people that created this trail really knew what they were doing, right? There is definitely a quick way to get to the end of this. That's not what this trail does. It really looks for the best and most interesting, unique spots to see. So this section is absolutely lovely. Take your time through it. I really enjoy it. And then you'll get to an area on the Millbrook mountainside. Really the last viewpoint is at the top of this, again, exposed ledge, looking out to the south. But if you look to the left, you can also see Skytop Tower as part of Mohonk Mountain House, which has a wonderful view there as well. But really, it just this whole section from the end of the carriage road to this Millbrook Mountain peak is just wonderful. So ledges, awesome trails, peaceful feeling. Oh, and along the way, I forgot, there is this, I'll call it a cave. I really think it's just a crack in the conglomerate. But set off the path a little bit is you can get down to this area, into this bowl-shaped area, where in the middle of the bowl is this cave. And if you stand at the top of the bowl, over on the right-hand side only, you can feel, especially in the summer, this continuous cold air just drafting and wafting up towards you. It actually feels pretty good, right? You're hiking hard, got a little sheen on you, and suddenly this wafting cold air cools you off. It's very good to see. I love that section too. Okay, and then the final section of this hike, you head back, you go downhill and then straight uphill. And it's really, I don't want to call it a means to an end, because parts of this section are absolutely stunning. But by this time, you're a little bit tired. You're dreading the walk up the hill. And at least I don't pay as much attention to the section as I should. But as you'll see on the video here, I mean, some of these sections are so lovely. If you're not in a rush, take your time through this area. It's very easy to just want to get back to the lake. But take your time through this area. Okay, so we've talked about the cliffs. We've talked about the trail. The third thing is Lake Minnewaska itself. Yes, it's crowded. I wish it wasn't crowded, but it is crowded. But that doesn't take away from its stunning beauty. My favorite section is on the southern side of the lake. There are cliffs that are easily accessible that you can walk out to. And they overlook the lake, where you can see additional layers of cliffs on the opposite end of the lake. And then behind that is a great view of the Catskill Mountains. So if you position yourself correctly, where you eliminate the visitor center from view, you have wonderful, cliffs, and then this deep blue lake, more cliffs, and the Catskill Mountains in the background. I love that view so much. Yeah, it's exquisite. When you do explore the lake, you can't explore every unblazed trail every time you go, but I know you go back more than once, so do take some time to explore the unmarked trails. They always lead to something good. One of them leads to this wonderful section where there's a cliff. Like the main part of the trail is up on this cliff, but if you get up the trail early on an unmarked trail, you can see this other cliff below it. And that has probably my favorite view, is from that lower cliff there. So just explore it on your own. You'll find your own wonderful places as well. Okay, let's talk photography. I love this place so much, but it also kills me that I don't have a keeper yet. I don't have a keeper, portfolio style photo here. For me, I struggle with too many options and frankly too many people. So I'll be hiking and I'll see, I'm not joking, every step of the way I see 10 compositions and I crack. I don't know which one to shoot, and I invariably end up trying to shoot them all. And that's really unfortunate. I really need to slow down and pick a spot and work that spot for an hour and not worry. I have the rest of my life to come back here. I don't need to take 50 awesome pictures every time I go. So that's something I struggle with. I think the main areas are, you know, what makes the hike great. I think the cliff edges with the glacial erratics are the most obvious. I do have a picture I quite like, but the atmosphere wasn't great. With the glacial erratic in the midground and a nice view of the area, with a nice view of the valley and the ridge lines behind it. But it was a bright sunny day, so that one didn't work quite as well. I think there were countless options of intimate scrub pine surrounded by blueberry bushes or other type of trees. There's limitless, really limitless photos of that type, and then the lake itself. So I think every photographer, even if you're not a landscape photographer, would enjoy this place tremendously. But if you're like me, you know, take the time and don't try to shoot everything, otherwise you'll struggle. So I'm working on that. Anyway. And then I guess the downsides, but if you're still with me, don't worry, there aren't additional downsides that we haven't already touched upon. But the downside, one, is the crowd.
There's 16 of us, so.
Good for you guys.
I would never hike here at noon on a Saturday in the summer. That just wouldn't bring me too much enjoyment. Not that I've tried it, I just assume that that would not bring me enjoyment. I've tried a weekend hike a couple of times, and by the time I got off trail, you are constantly seeing people. It's not like Mount Tammany or anything like that, where you'll see 100 people, 150 people on a hike, but you don't have a secluded feeling on this hike. I guess the other negative element is really the danger of the cliffs and crevices. But that's really easily managed, right? If you have a dog that you don't want near the edge, or a kid, or yourself, you're afraid of heights, just don't go near the edge, right? The trail itself never comes close to an edge. It's always additional exploration on your own that you can do, that makes it exciting for me. But if that's not for you, you just don't go to the edge itself.
Future Lou here for one quick moment. In editing this video, I definitely did not express how dangerous those cliff edges really were. Since about 1990, almost 10 people have died, from mountain bikers being out of control and falling off a cliff, to children, a police officer, hikers. So yeah, it is dangerous. Even though the trail does not go next to any cliff edges, obviously people will explore on their own. It's just too enticing. So please be extra careful. Thank you.
Yeah, so stop watching this video. Plan to get out to Minnewaska as soon as you can. It is absolutely worth your time. And hopefully my enjoyment shone through this time. Because like I said, it didn't work the first 2 tries. Okay, one last bit of housekeeping. I think I'm going to, I will split the 4K time-lapse into a separate video. I worry that someone will click on the link or see the thumbnail and then see this 50-minute video that starts with me talking and say, I don't want to listen to this guy talk for 50 minutes and not watch it. So I'm going to split them into 2. Here is the link to the 4K time-lapse. Also will be linked below, and I should have time to get around to it, but I think I will split the other 4K time-lapses out from the speaking parts of what makes this hike great as well. Okay, I think that's all. Thank you very much for watching. Get out and explore and enjoy Minnewaska.